Now we're recording.
We are?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, anyway, welcome to Rock Pops, a podcast about dads who are talking about music from being in bands to listening to bands and everything in between. Joe, how are you? Joe Pecora is with me. I'm Bill Gagliardi, and Joe Pecora, Bill Gagliardi. Joe, I got a pretty rough story. Not too terrible, but a little annoying. So the other day, my phone, which I've had for too long, I always hold on to my phones for a while because, I don't like to get new things, died on me, but to the point where I didn't have anything backed up, and I can't access the screen. So everything I had on that phone, you know what that includes? 114 song ideas. All gone.
Yeah.
But silver lining, I kind of think it's a good thing. Because it's like, now I could actually replay those songs and maybe make them a little bit different.
Do you think you remember them?
Some of them, the ones that stand out. I mean, some of them I probably was just like, okay, I got this idea and just never listen, breeze over them. Or maybe I could have it somewhere in my subconscious mind and then it'll come back to me. Because I do want to start writing again, would put lyrics. But
do you use Google for your
I do have
email?
a Google Drive.
Because mine's synced.
Every single thing.
Yeah.
I gotta check it out, but I don't think it is because I do have stuff on Google from old recordings and stuff that I've sent you, that I've sent a lot of my old former bandmates. All that stuff is still there. But
I don't want to make you feel worse, but recently I went back to my voice memos from 16, or maybe even early 13, maybe, and there's some good shit on there. So. Sorry, Bill.
No. It's like I said, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, and I hate to start it on a little bit of a down, but like I said, it's a little bit enlightening. It's a little bit liberating.
Sure. Yeah.
I was tied to these. I was like, these are the songs I'm going to do on the next album. That it's been 12 years since I recorded one, but it's going to happen. And you know what? This fresh start is exactly, I think, the kick in the pants I'm going to use. And plus, the new phone is a lot better. So, and now I'm going to start using GarageBand for it instead.
Oh, great.
So it's going to be good. A new fresh start instead of using the voice memo as a crutch. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're going to do our first gear episode. And what we're doing is we're starting from the ground up. And what's on the ground, for the most part, is pedals. And we have a guest. We're welcoming back with us Dave Rodberg.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And Dave is our resident gear guy for the longest time, especially at Red Room Studios. We've had a lot of Dave's gear, whether it's been stuff that he's owned or that he built. Dave builds a lot of stuff. He Frankenstein stuff, and Dave sold me an accordion that he built a pickup into as well, and everything was just by hand. So he's always done fascinating thing. He makes pedals.
The bellows are made out of human lungs.
Yeah. I don't know if everything was legal that he did, but the sound is fascinating.
Thanks.
One of Dave's greatest contributions gear-wise to our previous recordings was the Alamo amp.
Oh, the Alamo amp, yes.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little later, I think.
She's a beaut.
She's very special to me. Yeah, gear is the most important thing to me.
Sorry, Sarah.
I come from a family of musicians. My grandpa was a master piano player, and he would constantly throw instruments at me. Oh, let's
duck.
Yeah, and trumpets hurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
That he was a piano player too, this guy must have been shredded.
But let's get you to play piano. Let's get you a guitar. Let's get you a drum set. Let's get you anything that we're gonna find an instrument for you. And for the most part, I think drums were my instrument. But you can't always play drums in an apartment or in a small room. And I really did gravitate towards electric guitar at some point. And I don't like to practice. And at a certain point, I really steered towards gear. I'm very tactile. I really love all things gear. I really love amps. I really love pedals. I really love different guitars, different pickups, different basses, different combinations, all the colors, the finishes. It just goes on and on and on, that gear is more of my thing and my hobby than the actual playing and the performance of the music. Almost to the point where I just like to put instruments in people's hands. And that's why I really gravitated towards pedal building. And that's when I started this company with my younger brother, Red Mountain Audio. So it's slow going, but I've got one original overdrive pedal that we've designed. The Deep Drive.
Yeah, what's going on with that one?
We're in the process of selling as many as we can.
But what's the... tell us about the pedal.
Okay, so it's a, I love pedals that when you... I'm very obsessed with the idea of the desert island pedal. Like your desert island gear. What's a piece of gear that you're just... It doesn't even matter what it costs, because once it's in your hand, you know that you're not going to want to be without it for the rest of your... Like... Joe, what are some pedals that you have, for instance, that you wouldn't be able to live without?
It's interesting. It used to be my Keeley Super Overdrive.
Right. Because it's so much part of your sound.
Yeah, but now not so much.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess it would be a delay pedal. The funny thing is, I don't think I have much in I think because I haven't played live a lot and I've been recording a lot and recording other people, I think my chain has changed a lot. But it would be a delay pedal, and the one thing that stays is the TC Electronics chorus pitch modulator flanger.
So that's your one,
Yeah.
That's the one
probably,
that
yeah.
I see pedals as instruments. They're not just gadgets. They're not just, they're not toys. They're very much a part of the instrument. I always like to think of a guitar as 50%, an electric guitar. When you're holding your electric guitar and you're like, this is it, this is my thing, this is my sound. No, it's not. You still have to plug it into an amplifier in order for it to be a full instrument. And then the way to modify it and truly make it yours is to put something in between that guitar and that amp.
The pedals are the ingredients. The pedals are what's going to...
It's the spice, exactly.
Band. It's going to what forms the sound. And the pedals that you get, what you start off with and what you collect, is what's going to shape your sound. And even if we got the same exact pedals, it's going to be completely different.
Absolutely.
The tone, the sound,
absolutely.
whatever. Just like, this is something that we discussed before. Just because you have the same rig as some, A-list
If
musician.
I built the same rig as John Frusciante, if I got myself a classic Stratocaster and all of his pedals, the Ibanez wah, the Boss turbo distortion, which he's famous for using, and the classic Boss CE2 or CE1 chorus ensemble, and a few delay pedals, I would, and a Marshall stack, I would not sound like John Frusciante. I see no harm in mimicking rigs that you love, because you can't copy them. You're going to be it's like putting yourself at the motherboard of a ship. Like, you're going to fly it in a different direction.
And also, I feel like a big thing with that kind of like inspiration versus like copying kind of thing, when people are like taking that rig, this is where we get a little meta and a little philosophical.
Sure.
Or is you are the person who is like copying that rig is trying to approximate what they interpret that sound to be.
Sure.
Right? So you in your brain could go, oh man, listen to me playing. I sound exactly like Frusciante. It's that tone. And somebody would be like, no, John Frusciante's tone really sounds like this. So you're already starting in your own path because it's your interpretation. It's already factored in with so many other things of your likes, and as well as you're playing.
So that's why I wanted to make my own pedals, but I wanted to make something that was original, because I wanted to be able to sell one to someone, and they would put it on the ground, plug it in, and with very simple controls. I mean, my first pedal is just a volume and a gain pedal. There's more to the gain. There's a lot more going on than just a single knob, but I don't need to get into that. But I wanted it to be so user-friendly and so plug and play, with such a distinct sound that someone's going to go, yeah, this is me now. This is my sound. This is... I'm not going to leave home without this to play a show. I'm not going to record and not just have this or leave it on all the time, because it's very much a part of what I'm trying to create. Every time that I put together a pedal board, I'm trying to think about it in terms of I'm putting it together an entire instrument. I'm putting together the guitar. I'm thinking about what kind of pickups I'm going to be using, how I'm going to be pushing my signal, and like what stages, how I'm trying to like stack my drives and shape my sound before it even touches that amplifier. Because once it gets there, it's, there's so many steps along the way. I really just love guitar pedals.
It's
my
like,
goodness.
Yeah, man. It's like when you, the documentary.
Sure.
Where Jack White is so fascinated. He just showed how he gets whatever sound. He's a very good guitar player. Is he one of the best? No. But his craft is his board.
Sure.
Not his board. His racks,
craft is the creation of his instrument.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be a pedal builder or a guitar luthier builder or someone who modifies amps, or you don't need to be any of those things to build a rig. You literally just need to be open to the gear around you, what you're able to afford, and just putting it all together and using your own creativity in order to make it you. Because at the end of the day, it's really just what you hear, and that's going to be your sound. And you know what? That's not true either, because a rig can look pretty awesome. You can definitely put a lot of your artistic talents for your visuals into the way that a rig looks.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be, pedals duct taped to a guitar like Devo, but that's definitely a sound. That's a thing.
And an artistic look.
Right. Or the guy from Muse, what's his name?
Matt Bellamy. He has a whole Chaos pad in his...
Yeah, he's got his pedals in his guitar.
Yeah. Which is, I guess, can look
I heard an interview with the builder of his guitars, Mason, and he approached them. They were a small builder, and he approached them and said that he was having a hard time finding his own sound. Every time he picked up a Stratocaster, he wanted to play like Hendrix. That's what came out. Every time he picked up a Les Paul, he played Led Zeppelin riffs. Yeah. Every time he picked up a Telecaster, he was playing the blues. He said, I'm having a hard time finding my sound. I need something new. So he commissioned them to build him a Telecaster originally inspired guitar with a completely different shape, and it had a blank finish on the top. And from there, he was able to develop a pretty distinct sound.
Yeah, sure.
So let's start with the beginning with you. What was your first pedal?
My first pedal that I ever owned personally. See, I started as a drummer, so my younger brother played guitar and I played drums.
Brothers are included in this because a lot of my stuff I stole. I'll call it stole from my brother.
See, for me it wasn't stole. So he was my little brother, so I would buy him pedals. So I spent a lot of money on pedals for my brother before I ever owned a pedal for my the first pedal I ever bought him was the Boss Phase Shift Dark Green.
Yeah.
the jet engine sounds that you get when you max that thing enough to sell me of my.
Was that the one that had where you could select the amount of poles? Is that the one that went up to like 12 poles, or is that the one that had like just it was just a phaser and like one kind of setting?
No, it had 3 settings on it.
So I know there's like a 3, 6, and 12 or something. Is that on that one? Let me look
that might be a flanger.
No.
Oh no, you're right. No, you're right. I think you're right.
I gotta look just for my own PH3.
Yeah, that was the first pedal I ever spent money on. Was the Boss PH3.
Were there other pedals in the house prior to it?
No other pedals in the house.
So this was the first thing where like you're writing songs on it, or Tom's writing songs.
Yeah,
on
well, yeah, both of us writing songs on it together.
That's the thing. It's like when you first find that sound, it's like that's now something that would have just sounded clean. You probably would never even put those chords together.
Oh, absolutely. And then I think the next thing was the obvious Boss DS1 distortion.
The standard,
which is the standard.
I never owned one of those.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
I thought you had 2 on your rig. Don't you have 2 of the same pedal on your rig?
Super overdrives.
Yeah, he's got the super overdrive.
I got a regular and a modded super overdrive.
Yeah, an original Keeley modded.
Yeah, but I don't really use it. They're a little too thin.
What about you, Joe?
Well, I don't know if you know, but the Boss Super Overdrive is a tube screamer.
Yeah, I like it better than a tube screamer.
Tube screamer's not that great of a pedal.
Honestly, a tube screamer or any of those overdrives are made to be just that, overdrives. And the thing is, most of the time when you're playing with them, you're not playing at a gain level on your amp that's really doing it any justice. Yeah. Unless you are like using it to push an already like pushed amp.
Yeah.
It sounds thin.
They can be used pretty well as a boost. I wouldn't go as far to give any great sounding overdrive out of that circuit. There's been a lot of great. There's been thousands of Tube Screamer circuit copies and modifications that have all been pretty great. The Earthquaker Plumes that just came out a few years ago is probably my favorite Tube Screamer style circuit. It definitely took that circuit and pushed it where it needed to go in order to get rid of that thinness that you're talking about. It opened it up, and it really took it to the place where it's like, I'm going to crank this and jam out some awesome riffs with my friends.
Right.
And coming in at $100 price point, it's a really, really great pedal. So like I said, there's been so many other Tube Screamers, which is fine. If you like a Tube Screamer, use a Tube Screamer. Like, one of our friend John DeSalvo, he uses the Behringer copy of a Tube Screamer. It's great. Works great for him. He pushes it into my pedal, into the deep drive, which is one of the things I love most about my design for my overdrive. I designed the circuitry in a different way that all of the we're going to get into some electronics talk for half a second. The transistors that are, creating all of the gain, I have them biased as hot as they can possibly go to be as dirty of a sound as they can possibly be, but they're always on. And the gain knob is only sweeping through from a mix of clean to fully dirty. So what you get along the way is a really wide range of overdrive sounds, because you get a great boost at the bottom and you get all of that transparency of what your original sound was through the sweep. But as you get to the top, I also have a little extra hidden something in there that makes it very, very broken up at the top. So in my one pedal, in one knob, other than that, you also have a volume knob, for control. But through that one knob, you get anything from a great clean boost all the way to an amplifier that's been cranked to its limits, and somebody took a razor blade and slashed the speakers, and you can get that, Kink sound or Spirit in the Sky style overdrive. So when it came time for me to put my head around what kind of a circuit am I going to try to design for my first ever pedal from my company, it was clear to me that I needed something that had a lot of range, wasn't just a one-trick pony, but felt as if it could be super useful and something that you wouldn't want to live without once you had played with it.
So,
My first pedal?
you have a lot of pedals.
Yeah.
And there are some unique things there that I'm going to bring up in a little bit. But yeah, what was your first introduction to pedals? Because, like I said to Dave, your first pedal, or anyone where you bring it home, you're writing like 6 songs just based on that tone.
Sure.
But yeah, what was...
My first pedal was an American metal pedal.
Wow.
Is that what the Metal Zone took over, or no?
No, Metal Zone's Boss, right?
Yes.
It's purple. It's still in the studio, and I'm like, even having this conversation, it's making me think, I want to break it out for something.
Yeah.
Red Vox guitar part or something.
I'm a big fan of those.
Didn't they also have the grunge pedal too? That was purple.
They did. No, the grunge. Was it purple?
It was.
I thought
like
it was grayish.
It was like purple, and it looked like the paint was cracked,
Yes.
exposing the gray metal underneath. But that was a paint job that looked like it was
Right.
It was made to look like a shitty paint job.
But they're such toys,
Very grungy,
and they have such a high end boost to them. But they're dirty pedals, you know. They're really good dirty pedals.
That was
Yeah.
such a cool line of pedals too. There was one that wow, what was that?
You know,
the guy Buzz from the guitar. What's the guitarist? His name is Buzz, and he was in the. He has crazy hair.
Oh, from the Melvins?
Yeah, the Melvins. Buzz had a pedal in that line that time as the.
Was it just
Grunge.
called? It was the Buzz pedal.
I think it was the Buzz or Buzz Box, and it was like very, very thin, super cool. I mean, it had its uses, I think.
You know what I liked from them? It was one of the first ones. I didn't own it, but my neighbor did, and it was the DoD like Octaver kind of pedal. I don't even remember. That one was really great. I remember being really intrigued by that when I first started playing it.
Yeah.
Now, was it you were playing guitar for a while and then you got a pedal, or was it kind of like, all right, so guitar and pedal go hand in hand together?
So my next door neighbor, my best friend, played guitar, and he was like a shredder. So for me, my early years of playing guitar were always chasing him.
Yeah.
And I never, I got to shredding at some point, and then just by the time I was able to shred, I decided I don't really want to shred.
It's really funny listening to the way that you play guitar and knowing in the back of my head that you could do a Van Halen level type of eruption.
Not anymore. I mean, if I practice, maybe not anymore. But like, yeah, there
It's
was
just
a
funny
time.
you have it.
I don't know,
there was
Joe.
a time.
I've seen you. I saw you recording a solo in the studio once, and you were like, you know what? I need to stand up for this one. And you stood up and just ripped. Like, you were like, I need to be a little less relaxed for this solo. And I was like, this guy, he's got some secrets.
Ooh.
But so I used to like chase. I used to like play. So I was playing and getting pedals at the same time because I wanted to do what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he was in a band. He had like a rack. 'Cause he was in like thrash bands when like thrash was like big, like when it first started, and he had like a Marshall, not the stack. He had like I wonder if he still has it. He had like a really great Mesa Boogie, like I think a Mark III, but he had a rack too, and he had like the Marshall MP1 rack, and like there was an APA something, I don't know, but he had like a really cool rack, and he had like all Ibanez shit. So like
It's so awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty rad. So I used to want to play because he did, and I would find things that he did, but I was not going to buy those because they were expensive, and I was not going to ask my parents for that.
Yeah.
So like DoD pedals were relatively inexpensive in comparison.
And you have a lot of those, the funny looking ones, the
Dan
Dan
Electro.
Electros.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah, you know what I like? That's what you were talking before about. I don't remember what your wording was, but I am really a huge fan. You guys already know this, but I'm like a huge fan of taking whatever pedals around and punishing the crap out of it to see what you can do.
Sure,
Like,
use what you have.
right,
You
and
know.
usually use it as badly as possible. Like
Those are the
really,
ones to go treat poorly because they're $20 pedals, $30 pedals.
yeah. I mean, but even like really great pedals,
Yeah.
Like push it to. How else are you going to know what it does?
Yeah.
Oh,
Unless you push it to
absolutely.
its limit.
Yeah.
And then, especially if you start stacking a bunch of pedals and overdriving the crap out of those, that's when things start to oscillate, and you are now starting to develop your own sound.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Bill,
Yes.
what was your
Yeah, what
first
was yours?
pedal?
Everything that's my first, I'm just living vicariously through my brother. My
Sure.
brother's 4 years older than me, and he really was the driving force to what music I was listening to, what instruments I was playing, and what pedals I was buying, or he was buying. So the year is 1994 or 5, I want to say. Sicily, picture it. We're at the US1 flea market. You remember this? It was in Jersey.
Yes. Yeah.
It was
I
a
remember that.
wild dirt mall.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember what the kiosk was, but my brother said, "This is it. This is the pedal." I was like, "What's a pedal?" It was an Ibanez Fat Cat. He's still looking for it for this day. He asked me the other week, he's like, "Do you know where the Fat Cat is?" This thing kicked. It was a distortion pedal. I've had 4 distortion pedals until I moved on to something else. It was I think $30 at the time. The same pedal now could go for like $120. The 90s was amazing with high times for pedals. But before that, I didn't know that that's where the sound came from. I mean, sure, you could hit the button on. I had a Princeton 112 amp at the time. Solid state, just press the button, and then there goes the overdrive. I didn't know that you could control it with your feet. So this was amazing. Other than that, I think shortly afterwards, he picked up a Sovtek Big Muff.
Oh, nice.
And I think from the same mall, too.
Was it a green one or a black one?
Oh, it was a green one.
That was my first pedal that I ever owned for myself. I found one in a music store in Jersey, and they were going out of business. It was somewhere like South Jersey. They were going out of business. $50. It was the black one. And I still have it to this day. I have done so many modifications to that pedal.
This was the next thing I was going to ask. Can you fix this Big Muff for my brother?
Yeah, sure.
He's been asking me.
Yeah, that's it's so.
It's
yeah,
the standard. That's the
probably
distortion.
my
That's the fuzz
favorite pedal.
Yeah.
Of all time. The Russian Sovtek Big Muff. And actually, I have a few now, and I have some green ones too. Yeah. And the black one is just as good, and I think I like it even more.
Didn't you compress it into a tiny box? Like, didn't you put it?
No,
into...
Boss does that now.
Oh, okay.
They saw them going for $400, $500, $600 on eBay, and I said Boss Electro Harmonics.
Yeah,
and in a brilliant move by their marketing and engineers, they just re-released it as a $100 pedal, and guess what? It kicks ass.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome because now all those expensive pedals I have are not as expensive anymore.
Yeah.
But, it makes that sound more accessible. And I think that's one of the things I love about pedals is it makes sounds accessible. And it's not like, oh, I need to get that sound so I can sound like that guy. It's like, I need that sound because something about the way that it hits my ear, it matches my identity.
I remember there were so many times, and this was with my brother, maybe it was just once, but we were in the city, in the village, just going to music store, like going to Manny's, going to like all these other secondhand stores, and we were like, we're looking for a sound. We're looking for the new sound, and just trying out all different pedals and not finding it because you're not pushing things to their limitations, or you're just trying it on one pedal. But you mentioned,
or you're not even with your stuff.
No,
like that's one of the things that I never really. When I try out pedals in a store, I always take it with a grain of salt. I'm gonna get it home, and then I'm gonna put it right in the middle of the pedal board. And it's going to be a whole different instrument.
Right.
You know, I've had so many misses.
But I feel like this is the factor, though, that we end up, what you said before, but even like missing, even though we're talking about gear, is like you were saying before, like, oh, looking for a new sound, or that's the sound. Most of the time, like, all the things that we're chasing, though, are sounds that we heard on albums.
Yeah.
Sure.
And a majority of those times, those aren't like a lot of pedals.
No.
You know, especially from the classic ones, they're just really overdriven amps, like real amps played really loud to the point where they do oscillate on themselves, or the room, you know, like some of those great distortion tones and fuzz tones.
Or they're the smallest, dumbest, shittiest practice amplifier,
right,
pushed to
like
its
Brian May
limits.
stuff. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Brian May stuff. Queens of the Stone Age is a gorilla amp, you know, with 3 microphones in front of it, and the shittiest little harmony. I think it's a Juno guitar, just tuned low, and it's like one of the most distinct sounds that if I hear a half of a riff from Queen, I know exactly that it's them. And when I was younger, you never would have been able to convince me that it was an amp that you could find at a flea market for $1.
Like a Sears or something.
Right.
or even like some of the sounds that we consider like are great are actually like studio tricks or mistakes that people ended up like figuring out, okay, how do I get that sound live?
Yeah.
Like, how do I get like the sound of 2 tape machines playing out of phase with each other live? You know, so, you know,
Tell me about one of these days.
Eventide ends up making a phaser box.
Right.
You know, like the
It's the old Star Trek thing. It's like we found new technology from something that, you know, they made on TV years ago.
Right, yeah. And it's pretty cool. I think now, you know what also too is like a lot of those pedals, like I guess like I was just saying with the Tube Screamer, is a lot of those pedals when someone's like, you know, like say Billy Corgan. Oh, I used a Big Muff. Yeah, but he used a Big Muff into like one of those like Marshall racks and then into a JMP, and everything was like dimed.
Then also like he put like a Neumann or a 414 on there or something.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, right. And however
it's all about the mics. It's
the
all about
speakers too. Like the speakers make a big
and here's
deal.
my favorite part of the whole Billy Corgan Big Muff thing, and it's straight from his mouth himself. He just wanted to sound like somebody else that he had heard.
Right.
Went down to the store and grabbed Big Muffs. Little did he know that those Big Muffs from that year had op-amp chips in them and not the 4 transistors that we know and love in a Big Muff. So he was using a Big Muff that was pretty rare, and when people went to go mimic that sound, they picked up their Big Muffs and they were like, yeah, this is it. We got that Billy Corgan sound. No, you didn't. You had a completely different pedal
right.
with an entirely different circuit in front of you.
It's amazing that products from the same line could sound completely different just because
Oh, definitely.
because like it was soldered in a different place on the pot or something.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, like I try to have all of my pedals sound the same, but I build so few pedals. You know, I'm a small builder. I'm one guy by myself.
Building one at a time.
And the best I can do is when I'm testing a pedal, I test it with the last one that I built. So when I'm done, I clean it up, take it off the rack, I throw it up, and I start to test it. I usually A/B it with the very last pedal that I made that's still waiting to be sold.
so it's like
or
Michael
I'll
Keaton
test
in
it.
Multiplicity. You're making a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah,
and then you get the last guy on one pizza.
I still have my original that I
Great reference.
I have a few prototypes of it that I still have around, but I have my original number 1 that I kept for myself. But I don't think it was number 1, but I kept it for myself, and I do test against that every once in a while. But there's definitely small variations in them. You know, man, I just love pedals.
Can I geek out on like a, I don't know if it's, I guess it works in a gear sense, but it's like, all right, so it's kind of a workaround that turned out really cool. The 720 amp.
Oh yeah, the Univox.
Well, yeah, it's like I looked up a lot of information about
the Univox had sold off its name.
Yes, and basically the 720 amp was like back in the day when you would go into Sam Goody to buy your records, and they would sell like really shitty like first act guitars and stuff like that. The 720 amp was like basically like the first act of amps back then. So it was a real shitty amp. But I've been using it in the effects chain of the Hot Rod DeVille. So, because it has a line out on it. So I'm coming out from the send on the effects loop into the 720, boosting the crap out of that and using that crappy E and sending it back.
So that's interesting. You're using the Hot Rod DeVille's preamp first.
Yes,
for the guitar,
and I'm pushing the power tubes,
and then you're pushing the preamp of the 720, and then coming back to the DeVille, and then pushing the power tubes with a double preamped sound. That's pretty awesome.
And it worked out really great for some of the Redvox like cleaner tones, because I'm using it on some of the solo tones, but I'm not really using it for like crunchy rhythm guitars because it's a little thin. But a really cool thing is like now, and I have the two amps facing each other, and I'm using a ribbon mic in between, and ribbon mic is figure 8, so you pick up both sides.
Sure.
And so I have the what would be the backside of the ribbon mic, which on this particular ribbon mic, nasalier and like brighter on the 720, which is already really fucking bright and craps out. But the combination of the two is really, really cool. And then when you can do really cool things with that signal and kind of like phase reverse it and kind of make a really cool spread or slightly chorusing thing. It's really, really great for like almost getting a compressed clean sound. Oh, because you're just compressing the tubes.
Sure.
It's great.
And also wouldn't they because of both the amps, because of the phase,
yes,
it causes some compression.
Right. They're pushing the mic in different spots and at opposite each other.
See, this is actually something that I wanted to talk about as one of my all-time favorite things to do with gear. And it doesn't even have to do with pedals, but it's how do we create effects out of things that are physical? See, this is something that I'm going to probably dig deeper into in my next few pedal designs, which, by the way, they're not coming anytime soon because this first one took me 6 years to design after work.
I got a great design I want.
Well, we'll talk about it later. But I love the idea of sounds that are in electrical signals from a guitar, from a bass, from a vocal, from anything, from an organ, from a keyboard, and then turning that frequencied signal into something, I would call it more physical, and then turning it back into electrical signal. So bringing it into the physical space. So whether that be an echo chamber, I love the idea of physical echo chambers where the speaker is playing it out loud and the microphone on the other side is picking it up. Or the plate reverb that I built you, Joe. Because when Joe told me many years ago that he said, "Do you hear that on this Beatles album? That's a plate reverb." I had never heard of one before.
I don't know if it was on a Beatles album.
I think it was Beatles we were listening to.
They would use a lot of chamber, but it was probably Floyd.
Maybe it was Floyd. I think, well, because we were talking about the one at Abbey Road.
Right.
Maybe that's why I'm remembering. But you were like, this is a plate reverb. This is a physical giant piece of steel stretched super tight, and music or sound is played into a center of it, and then pickups pick up the sound when it gets there. And I thought it was just the most amazing thing that I went home and I built you one.
It's awesome too. I mean, I think the plate has to be like a different plate at some point because, but it makes like a really cool, like, it's awesome. That's really cool. It gets used on like a lot of stuff. That's a great thing. Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
for it. Or sending a signal back out through a headphone and then miking the headphone.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you used to play with that a lot too, like just like smaller speakers, but making them sound bigger.
Right, or sending a signal out through a microphone, like because you can use the microphone as if you want to.
Yes.
Or like a Univibe pedal has a light bulb inside of it.
I love Univibe pedal. I love the Univibe sound.
I was trying to figure out why I love it so much, and then I discovered that there's a light bulb inside of it, and you push voltage into the light bulb, and the light turns on, and slowly, not slowly, but it goes from nothing to dim to bright, and then goes back down, and then shuts off. And it does that, many times in a second. Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
And what you actually hear is a photo sensor, like a light sensor, retrieving that light and then telling the wave how to affect your frequency of whatever you're playing into it. And you hear the curve of the push of light and the retraction of light. And I just think that's the coolest thing.
That's pretty cool.
That's so cool.
Oh my God, science.
Yeah, I think some of this is science.
It's all science.
That guy from Game Changer Audio stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's like real science, like science pedals.
Yeah, and
Really
if
cool.
you want to listen to science, that new Jack White album, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's like listening to science.
Well, he's using Pro Tools for the first time.
Really?
Yeah. He did it's him using Pro Tools and cutting things up and like doing things. I think for a lot of it, he was saying like he put the drums on last. Very like different kind of.
And also those Game Changer pedals.
That's what he's using on those?
Oh my! Yeah, I can hear it because they're so they're the kind of thing that you'll never be able to get the same sound out of them twice. So it's that whole album is just so much performance. He's gonna hit that guitar and it's gonna squeal so hard in such a strange direction, and then I guess Pro Tools helps it go backwards and.
He's got a song on this month's Relics sample album, I think, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple of good bands on that sample album.
Subtle push.
Redvox is on it as well.
Bing bong.
Bing bong bing.
But Dave, did you said that the Big Muff definitively is your favorite pedal? Or is there another pedal that you would say is from the whole pantheon of pedals that you
I think
what's one that you can't live without?
I don't think that the Big Muff is probably my favorite pedal, but I don't think it would be like my Desert Island pedal.
Oh, okay.
Like I said before.
Yeah.
I think when it really came down to it, it would have to be a reverb pedal, preferably a plate reverb, and I really love digital plate reverb pedals. Ones that I can take into atmospheric realms where you just crank them up on the time and they don't stop until you unplug the pedal. Something about having time-based effects when you're playing by yourself. It's like playing with somebody else because all you have to do is make that first sound and then
Have the drone.
and then you've got a companion to play with, whether it's a looper or a delay, and it's going to give you that bounce back. Reverb for me has always really been the one that I gravitated to the most. I love the overtones that come in with a long.
That's cool. It's plugged in, but an adapter that it's not really charging.
So we got like 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I guess we'll just lighting round other favorite pedals. Just to go on with that, and I'll just trim this up to that. Reverb, that would be the same for me. My number one pedal is my Boss DD6. It's the DD3 is probably the more well-known one, but the DD6 had a longer 7-second loop. And at the time that I got it, it was the same time that the Line 6 MK2 was out, or the MK4. I'm not really too sure what the number
DL4.
The DL4.
Yeah, the green one with the looper in it.
Yes, and a lot of people at the time were doing the layered, one acoustic guitar player doing percussion and everything. So it's that plus a Boss delay pedal. So just for the same reasons that you said, like you're just playing with somebody else on your own. It has that whole thing of when you're speeding up the time on it while a sound is going on. It's got that like Paranoid Android at the end, or Karma Police at the end.
That self-oscillation.
Yeah, like really, really cool stuff. I don't know, Joe, what's your...
I don't think... You know what? I don't know. I don't really have I would say it would be... If I needed something... It's not specific. It would be a delay that I can make... It would be a delay pedal. Because I feel like there's so many different sounds you can get out of it. And... generally like some kind of slap that I can make crusty.
Oh, you are like the king of slapback.
I love really, really, really like fast, fluttery ones that almost sound like ring modulation.
Yeah.
I think those are cool.
There was one pedal, and I always thought this as the distinct Red Room pedal, was the Digitech Synthwa, or Synth Reverb.
The Synthwa.
The Synthwa. It was, I think you used it a lot on Reset. I used it a lot on Villain. Like, it's just this fat, just synth modulator. And it just has so many options to it. At the time, Digitech was making cheaper pedals, and this thing is worth its weight in gold.
My cousin's boyfriend bought it for me for Christmas one year, and I don't think he knows how much I ended up using it. And it's great. We tend to end up using the electro harmonic stuff now.
No,
but I feel like if I played live, I would definitely use that synth. There's something about it that made
unique.
That going into I usually put it in an effects chain.
Yeah,
like distortion into that and then back into distortion. And it made a really...
Love that pedal.
Yeah, man. A tracked chord's pretty cool, too.
Can we do a quick worst pedal?
Worst pedal?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say, in vain with your synth-wah, I have a pedal that I bought for my younger brother, and he totally did not dig it, and it just ended up back in my hands. And I really didn't like it either. But then one day I was playing with it, and I was like, there's something to this thing, but there's too much going on. It's the Dane Electro Sitar Swami.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Okay?
Yeah. It's just an octave pedal, isn't it?
Well, there's so much more to it. So I really, one day I sat down with just the pedal, and I'm like, what am I even hearing right now? It's an octave up, an octave down. You get your regular signal through it as well. So now you've got these 3 octaves playing all at the same time. And then it also has a ring modulator on it.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got that fuzzy, metallic, digital sounding texture to your octaves. And then also it had a phaser, or I would call it a phaser, not a flanger. But it had a phaser sound on it that was on top of the whole pedal, and you couldn't change the depth, you couldn't change the rate. When you turn the pedal on, it just... and it was annoying like you couldn't imagine. So I was in high school at the time, and I was like, I'm going to just open this pedal up and see what the hell's going on. I opened it up.
There were bugs in it, weren't there?
No, there was a lot of digital circuit chips, and I was completely confused and had no idea what was going on. I stared at it for long enough.
Was it Homer going back into the bushes?
Stabbing it with a screwdriver until it made another noise.
So I poured Coca-Cola on it to see what happened.
I knew enough about electronics to know that electronic circuit boards have a ground, and that everything goes to ground. And I took a pair of alligator clips, like testing leads, and I found what I thought would be ground, which I was right. It was somewhere where a screw was going through and grounding the whole pedal, and I started just touching things. A lot of sparks later, I got rid of the swooshing sound. and I was like, this is really interesting. I think that was my first foray into any kind of pedal modification or building, but I think I spent like an hour or two with the thing, and I got rid of the swooshing sound.
Awesome.
And I couldn't believe how much better the pedal sounded. So then I started doing more, and I was able to take away the upper octave. And then what I thought, well, that's cool. I could take away this upper octave, but what if I still want it? Oh, I'll add a switch. And all I'll do is interrupt it, and I'll ground out that part of the circuit, or I'll bring it back at the click of a button. So that was my very first circuit bend, and I used that pedal for everything. When you kick that pedal on with the Big Muff,
That's the Dave Rodberg sound.
that's the Dave Rodberg sound. That was so cool. So much fun.
That's awesome.
I think
What about you?
I think my worst pedal, or it's my biggest regret buy, and I just gave it a home at Red Room Studios, and that is the Dunlop Talkbox. I was like, I need a Talkbox. I don't know why. Like I mentioned this band before. I was in like a new metal band at one point in my life, and the guitarist had one. I was like, this is fucking awesome. So I bought it, and then it was like when you buy a new toy, you have to go back to the old toy just to be like, oh no, I still like you too. Like they're sentient or something. Or like you play your old video games before you play your new video game. But like I always have to do that to this pedal. So every single album that, like my solo albums, the only ones on Spotify, but I have 2 other ones, I have to have it at least once. It's a rule. I have to put this on there just to like justify that I own this thing.
It hasn't
terrible.
been used since that album.
No, it hasn't been used. And like I'm like, oh Joe, yeah, do whatever you want with it. But it goes in your mouth. There's a tube there. That tube probably.
And then you got to mic the mouth. It's an interesting thing. You know what? We should revisit it.
Let's do it. All
Let's
right.
do it.
Yeah.
Got it. But
Let's do
the
it.
worst pedal, and it's not mine. It's my brother's, because my brother loves to collect stuff. And it was the last year my brother and I lived together. He comes home with a Satori Sonic. I think it was called the Wiggler or the tape. I don't know which is the tapeworm or the Wiggler or whatever. I hate it. And it's a modded tremolo pedal, but there's this one button on it, and I'm just going to do a trigger warning right now because I'm going to get really close to the mic, but it's just this sound for no reason. And my brother was playing it really loud, just playing with the pedal when he brought it home. He's like, this thing is awesome. Down in the basement, I was like, 2 weeks later, I moved out of the house because of that sound. I don't know if he still has the pedal. I hope during the Flamin' Lips concert, because I borrowed his rig, that the paper got into it and destroyed it. It was the worst thing I have ever had on any pedal board. Joe?
I honestly, and I can't say it's worst. I just have to say I haven't figured out how to use it effectively. I have a ring modulator. I have a Mooger Fooger ring modulator, and I really have only ever used it as like a tremolo.
Right.
Because I can't figure out for the life of me how I can make a ring modulator.
I've spent a lot of time with the Mooger Fooger ring modulator. The bassist in my band, Rob Casey, had one for a long time, and he, in a similar situation, couldn't quite figure out what to do with it. I think the best application for a ring modulator is low and slow. It's an accompaniment to whatever it is that you're playing. You have to tune it to whatever song that you're going to play.
But it's never going to be in tune with the song you play.
But that's okay, actually.
There's so many different harmonics that are so non-complementary.
Well, you just want to start at a specific note. You know, if you're starting on A, like hit an A, match it, set it low, and then mix it so it's almost in the bottom of your mix of what you're playing. And then it's going to add really nice harmonics and modulation to things in the backgrounds of what you're playing.
There's only one song I can personally think of, I know there's probably more, that I've heard a ring modulator used effectively and like musically.
And what's that?
It's Kim's Watermelon Gun from the Flaming Lip. And it's still like a poppy song. It's like that riff is that
Yeah.
It's got a ring modulator on it.
But it's not used. The level of the mix is not high though. Like ring modulators could get really sloppy.
Yeah, but it's pretty much I guess it's running in parallel to just a regular distorted guitar.
Yeah.
But it's the main sound of that riff.
The newest Red Hot Chili Peppers album, Unlimited Love, has some really great ring mod on it. Something I wasn't expecting to hear, honestly. Honestly. What time is it? What year is it? Yeah. I think it's Aquatic Mouth Dance has some really great uses of a ring modulator in a funky setting.
Cool.
Because it's so... it can be used so well percussively. You know, when you're playing that funky rhythmic guitar, you're going to hear some really awesome accents that are coming from the ring modulator and not just you. You know, I love that pedal. I feel like it's a great accompaniment, but it definitely is a little hard to tame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. Like, you know, if you know how to use it, I don't know, we got to get going before the battery does, right?
Yeah.
All right. If you have any stories that about any pedals, or if there's anything ideas that you have that you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear them. Please email us at rockpopspod@gmail.com. Dave, do you have anything to plug real quick?
I mean, we've got a website that we're working on, but you can find Red Mountain Audio on Instagram at Red Mountain Audio. Hopefully more circuits and more pedal designs in the future. DM for any availability on pedals. Everything's built by hand. I hope to hear from you guys soon.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah, the Deep Drive pedal.
I love talking with you guys.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to come back on a lot of gear episodes. And thank you guys so much for listening. And click and subscribe whenever we get that button. Take care.